Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We're gonna wait just one more minute to let people pop in and then we'll get started. Hi everybody, my name is Tish Mindeman and I'm the communications manager here at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. I want to let you guys know that this meeting is being recorded. Not that we want to discourage you from interacting, but just so that you're aware. A few housekeeping things before we get started. Make sure that if you have any questions, you pop off of mute, ask us, or send them in the chat or the Q&A function. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Our team has done a really good job with trying to gather as much information about the census as possible. And this is really just a time for you guys to be able to interact with us and ask us questions about the ag census in terms of acreage. So, who we are. We started at the University of Arkansas Law School in 2013 under two Indigenous lawyers, Janie Sims Hip and Stacy Leeds. And we really focus on putting food sovereignty into tribal sovereignty. So we want to make sure that everybody has healthy food systems and diversified economic development and cultural food traditions. Today, we're going to talk about some trends from 2022. We're going to talk about some comparisons between BIA and USDA, and then what's to come from our next Census of Ag, and then what's to come next from the Census of Agriculture in general. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jamie Black. She can introduce herself and she'll start us off.
OCO, my name is Jamie Black. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and I currently work as our policy assistant here at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. So I had the great privilege of being the one to really be in the weeds about all the ag census research. I like to joke and say that that was my Valentine's present from the USDA, was getting our NAS data on February 13th. So that's been a blast to go through. So just to start off, if none of you know what the Census of Agriculture is, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a count of all things agriculture. It occurs every 5 years, and it's been going on for a very long time. But only recently we've really seen major inclusions of Indian country in the Census of Agriculture. So I think we can go on to the next slide. So we actually have a one pager, and if you got it in the email, you might already have this pulled up, but if not, you can conveniently scan the QR code right now and you can just kind of follow along, but totally not necessary, but if you want it on hand. Well, perfect. So this, even though this is 2024, we are looking at the data from 2022. And this is just the trends over the entire United States. As a whole, there was a 6.9% decrease in the total number of farms in the US. There was a 2.2 decrease in land and farms. So the actual acreage has also gone down. But there was, of land and farms, but then there was a 5% increase in the average farm size. So, like, if one producer were to have a farm, their farm might have expanded in size. But then there was also a 0.75% decrease in the number of producers. If I actually go, I watched the congressional hearings, and yesterday they were asking about what can be done about the loss of farmers and the loss of the number of producers. So it's definitely something that is heavy on everyone's mind right now. think we can go. Thank you. So in Indian country, we've seen also some decreases, but also some increases. There was a 4.87% decrease in the number of farms. And as you can see, it rounds out to be about 2,000 farms that we lost. But there was an increase in the land and the farms. So very congruent to what we're seeing on the overall United States trend. And again, the decrease in producers. So here's just another way to kind of look at the comparison of the change. You can see in the brown, we have the native producers highlighted, and in the more olive green color, we have the non-native. So again, if you're just a visual person and this works out better for you to see, this is kind of how we have the numbers stacked up. And then over time, we have actually looked at the numbers since 2007. And this is the change in the acreage from 2007 to today. So as you can see, in 2017, there was actually a pretty sharp decline, but it's back on the rise now. So what was left out of the National Agriculture Statistics Survey? They actually haven't released their full report. That'll become available on August 29th of this year. So we actually weren't able to compare all of the trends that have been seen over the United States. We didn't get to see the average size of farms, the total cropland, and the estimated market value of land, buildings, and machinery. So we unfortunately don't have those to report on and to compare, but hang tight because they'll be here in August. Next slide, thank you. So it's actually interesting to look that there is a comparison of how the BIA and the USDA break down definitions of acreage. And I think Tish is going to take over from here to explain to you guys more about that.
Thanks, Jamie. So there are some specific definitions when we're looking at land, irrigable versus non-irrigable. So let's look first at how the BIA defines their acreage. So the BIA, or the Bureau of Indian Affairs, sets the guidelines for acreage for Native American farmers leasing agricultural lands that are held in trust by the U.S. government for tribes or individual Indians. For tribal lands, the acreage is based on the total acres in the tribal tract or the specific areas included in the lease. So for individual Indian lands, the acreage is determined by the number of acres held in trust for that individual. So ag leases on these trust lands are limited to a maximum term of 10 years, and they must be used for agricultural purposes. The acreage that is allowed under these leases has certain limits, like up to 320 acres for irrigable land and 640 acres for non-irrigable land, beyond which BIA approval is required. So if you wanted to lease up to, let's say, 700 acres of non-irrigable land, the BIA is going to have to approve that request. Additionally, they establish specific land use plans that further define how acreage and conditions for those agriculture leases are used. Something to be aware of is that the exact definitions and regulations can vary based on the tribal or individual Indian land and the existing land use plans. So it's very specific to what's going on that individual land. Now, the USDA and NASS have different definitions for acreage, which are crucial for those agricultural statistics. And so we have planted acreage, which is the total land area planted with a specific crop. So whether that's corn or beans or squash, and we know that can be a little bit different when we're talking about tribal agriculture, when we're talking about like the Three Sisters and how like those aren't planted separately, they're planted together. Harvested acreage is like the total land area from which the crop is harvested. Cropland acreage is the total land area used for crop production. And then the total farm acreage is everything that is part of the farm, like cropland, pasture land, woodland, and other agricultural land. So like if you had a Quonset barn that technically you weren't um, using, like it didn't have, even if it didn't have a crop in it right then, it would still be counted. So NASS utilizes those definitions to gather and report that data on the acreage for different crops and farming practices through surveys like the Perspectives Planning Crop Production and also the Census of Agriculture. And that's how we get these numbers that we've presented to you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us, Tish. So now some of you guys may not be familiar with what the Ag Census actually asks its producers. So on our one pager, we actually have it broken down on those questions. And some of them are what the total acres that are owned, what acres are rented or leased to and from others, acres that are harvested with crops, what the land status is, whether it's through permits, land ownership, land rented or used, the number of acres harvested land from plots with crops failed or abandoned, cropland and summer fallow, land idle for any reason, or cover crop usage, soil improvement, um, permanent pasture, rangeland, open grazing land, or range management units, woodland pastures, land and farm plots that is only used for pastures or grazing, or even woodland that's not pastured at all. They also ask about acres from which field crops are harvested, and we've actually gone over a lot of these questions with our coworker Megan Baldy, our food safety specialist, and what her experience with these questions have been as a producer. And you can see those questions and hear about that more in our podcast, Rooted Wisdom, which Tish so graciously hosts and does such a fabulous job at. And if you go to the next slide, we can talk about some more of the resources that are available when it comes to looking at acreage in Indian country specifically too. So there's the Native Land Information System that's provided from Village Earth. We have partnered with the Land Information System for AARP resources, and they're also a NAF grant recipient. So that's all just to say that they're a really trustworthy resource. We use them a lot to be able to visualize the data and just kind of break it down in an easier way. But for my research personally for this project, I really looked at their Lost Agriculture Revenue Database, which their acronym for that is LARD, which it actually has a lot of like really cultural significance, and they explain that on their website as well. But it just helps to quantify the impacts of land secession and discriminatory agriculture policies and practices that we've seen from the government. So this database is really incredible. It breaks down 178 years worth of agriculture census data and all the way down to the county level. So, you know, you're able to actually see where the lost revenue is of these farmers specifically. So that's a really great resource to have, as well as just using the USDA NASS website. I'd say that it's fairly user friendly. You can go in and find the year that you want to look in, just kind of deep dive from there. Control F is your best friend when you're going through these type of documents. I know personally I would just Control F and look for American Indian, look for crop specifically. And that's definitely the best way to use these resources. And of course, we're a resource. You can always check our website for what we've broken down, just like we have the one pager that breaks down the acreage resource and research that I did. So if you guys have any more questions though, definitely ask us and we can help you sort of navigate through these databases and these resources. And I think that's it from what we have on what we found. But does anybody have any questions for us right now about using these databases, what kind of research that we've been doing with them, or what we found? Are there any in
So,
the chat?
so while you guys are thinking of your questions, um, you can follow us on socials. We have our website, obviously, and then we're on Facebook and LinkedIn and also on Instagram. Oh, we do have a question from Lucille Contreras. She says, we're a state recognized tribe, the Lipan Apache. Is there any data specific to state recognized tribes?
So in my research, there hasn't been any state recognized tribe specific data, but we'd be more than happy to take another closer look at that for you.
And Lucille, it would really depend on if people who are part of your tribe are filling out the ag census. So it's a 10-page document, and we know that it's a pain to like figure out some of those questions, but it's really important to fill those out, and we can help sometimes with answering those questions. So there's not any state tribe specific data, but you can you there is data on what's going on in the state where you live. Um, you can't just mark citizen of a federally recognized tribe on the census, but it can give like I think that there's like another, is there an other box, Jamie,
Yes,
on the
yeah, there's
census?
another box.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, and a lot of the data that is available on NAS, it can go down to even the county level. Um, Again, it can get kind of complicated when you're trying to figure out, oh, well, how many producers are in this county that are in this state recognized tribe. But um, if you have that information, or you even have an idea of where you want that research to take you, you can go down to the county level, the state level, and you can really get in the weeds there. Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question.
So I'm a former teacher, and it takes about 7 seconds for the mind to think of a question. Um, so that's why we are happy to give you a little bit of time to think of those questions.
And I'd also just like to remind everyone that uh, a lot of times we can have really specific questions about crops and things like that, and maybe the acreage that has to do with those. But unfortunately, all that information will come out in August. So as soon as that comes out, we will have another webinar. I think our September webinar, yeah, September 18th, we'll be able to break down all the good new data that we'll get.
And if you do have questions that you think of later, you can always contact us at agpolicy@uark.edu. That goes to our policy team, and they can break those questions out and really do a deep dive for you if you need some help with those kinds of things. Dang, Jamie, we did such a good job. Nobody's got any questions.
I know. I'm impressed with us. Well, even if anybody has some maybe non-acreage related questions to the ag census, we're more than happy to stay behind a little bit longer on the Zoom link and chat about those. But if you have learned what you came here to learn, you can feel free to go about your day.
We're really glad that all of you all showed up.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lucille.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.